In 1362, an army of unemployed mercenaries crushed France's royal forces in open battle. Not a skirmish, a full rout. Count Jacques de Bourbon, one of the most powerful nobles in France, was mortally wounded and died in Lyon shortly after. These were not random highway robbers. They were professional soldiers with command structures, their own secretaries to manage the loot, and enough men to outnumber a royal army. If even the king's forces couldn't stop them, what chance did you have as an ordinary traveler or villager? More than you'd think. Medieval communities built a layered defense system so effective that its backbone, a law called the Statute of Winchester, stayed on the books for 544 years, from 1285 all the way to 1829. Your neighbors were legally required to chase criminals on sight. Roads were physically cleared to eliminate ambush points. Your local church doubled as a bunker, and when all else failed, entire communities organized military campaigns to hunt down robber knights and burn their castles to the ground. When you picture a medieval bandit, you probably imagine some desperate peasant hiding behind a tree with a rusty knife. And sure, plenty of bandits were exactly that. But here's what makes the medieval bandit problem genuinely terrifying. Some of the people robbing you were trained castle-owning knights. During the Great Interregnum of the Holy Roman Empire, a 23-year stretch from 1250 to 1273 when there was no emperor at all, minor nobles across Germany set up unauthorized toll stations along rivers and highways, charging whatever they wanted. The Germans had a word for them: Raubritter, robber knights. Refused to pay? They had soldiers, swords, and a fortified castle to retreat to. And some went further, robbing merchant ships, seizing entire cargoes, kidnapping travelers for ransom. With no central authority to stop them, the number of illegal tolling stations exploded. But the problem got worse. During the 100 Years' War, truces meant thousands of professional soldiers were suddenly laid off with no income and no civilian skills. They formed what historians call free companies, organized mercenary bands that pillaged the French countryside for a living. And these were not ragged gangs. The companies roaming Auvergne in September of 1363 numbered around 2,000 lances of men-at-arms and 1,000 mounted infantry, not counting their dedicated pillagers. They had captains, staff, even secretaries to manage the distribution of loot. The French called them routiers, and when kings were not hiring them, they ransomed entire regions, forcing villages to pay protection money just to avoid being burned. Roads through dense forest, mountain passes where you had to slow down, river crossings where there was nowhere to run. These soldiers knew exactly where to wait, and they had the training to use it. So if the people attacking you could be professional soldiers with command structures and fortified bases, what could an ordinary villager or merchant actually do? A lot, actually, because the medieval defense against bandits started long before anyone drew a weapon. It started with your neighbors. In medieval England, a system called frankpledge organized most men over the age of 12 into groups of about 10 households, called tithings. Clergy and wealthy landholders were exempt. Their land or station served as their own guarantee, but for everyone else, every member of a tithing was personally responsible for the behavior of the others. If someone in your group committed a crime, you and the rest had to drag him to court. Couldn't produce the accused? The entire tithing was fined. Think about what that actually means. Your neighbor's crime becomes your bill. The system traces back to the laws of King Canute, who died in 1035, and it created something no individual could build alone. A community where everyone had a financial reason to watch everyone else. You kept an eye on your neighbor not out of goodness, but because his trouble hit your pocket. and it was enforced. Twice a year, the sheriff or local lord held a formal court called the View of frankpledge, where every member had to show up, confirm enrollment, and swear to keep the peace. Miss the court? Fined. Fail to report a crime you knew about? Fined. The system turned entire communities into self-policing units. Exactly what you need when there's no professional police force and the nearest lord might be a full day's ride away. But frankpledge was about accountability after the fact. It kicked in once something had already gone wrong. What people needed was a way to respond in the moment when a crime was happening right now. That's where the hue and cry came in. The concept is stunningly simple. If you witnessed a crime, you screamed, and everyone who heard you was legally required to drop whatever they were doing and join the chase. This was not a suggestion. By 1285, English law made it a binding obligation for every able-bodied man between 15 and 60. If someone raised the hue and cry, shouting an alarm, sometimes blowing a horn, you chased. You chased from your village to the next village. From that village to the next county, you kept going until the criminal was caught, escaped beyond reach, or the pursuit was called off. Refused to join? Your community faced fines. And if the fugitive was caught carrying obvious evidence of guilt and resisted capture, the law permitted killing him on the spot. Now, this system had a clear weakness. It depended on people being close enough to hear the cry. On a remote forest road with no settlement for miles, there was nobody to shout to. But near villages and market towns where most people actually lived and traveled, a merchant gets jumped. He breaks free and runs toward the nearest settlement screaming. The first person who hears him is a farmer. That farmer shouts. His neighbor shouts. Within minutes, you have a growing wave of armed men running in the same direction. The criminal is not being chased by one victim. He's being chased by an entire village. The hue and cry turned populated roads into dangerous places for bandits. But it was still reactive. Someone had to get attacked first. The next step was stopping the attack before it ever happened. In 1285, King Edward I signed a single piece of legislation that would quietly become the backbone of English policing for the next 5.5 centuries. It's called the Statute of Winchester, and it stayed in force until 1829, when London finally created a professional police force. 544 years of continuous use. What made it remarkable is how physical it was. The statute didn't just tell people to be careful, it reshaped the actual terrain to make banditry harder. Chapter 5 ordered that every highway between market towns be cleared of undergrowth, ditches, and hedges for 200 feet on either side, roughly 60 meters in each direction. No bushes where someone could crouch. No ditches where an attacker could wait. The law's own language describes clearing away anywhere a man might hide to do harm. And if a lord failed to clear his stretch of road and a robbery happened there, he was held legally responsible. If someone was murdered on that road, the lord paid a fine at the king's discretion, which effectively meant the king could name the price. But the statute went further. It required every man between 15 and 60 to keep weapons in his home, appropriate to his social rank, and mandated inspections twice a year to make sure he actually had them. It formalized the watch and ward system. Towns had to post night watchmen, close their gates after dark, and detain any stranger who couldn't explain himself. And here's the provision that tied the whole thing together. If a crime happened in your district, your 100, and the criminal was not caught within 40 days, the entire community paid restitution to the victim. Put yourself in 1290 and feel the weight of that. You're not just a bystander. Your roads are cleared so you can see trouble coming. You own a weapon because the law says you must. Your town locks its gates every night, and if a bandit robs the merchant down the road and nobody catches him, the bill lands on you and every one of your neighbors. You have every reason in the world to care about crime because crime costs you money. The frank pledge made your neighbors responsible for each other. The hue and cry gave them a way to act in the moment. And the Statute of Winchester built the entire infrastructure around it. Cleared roads, armed citizens, locked gates, and a financial penalty that made apathy expensive. Each layer reinforced the others, and it held for over 5 centuries. But not every threat could be stopped by a cleared road or a locked gate. During the worst years of the 100 Years' War, the free companies we talked about earlier, thousands of professional soldiers could descend on a village with almost no warning. When that happened, people needed somewhere to run. And in most villages, there was only one building strong enough to hold them: the church. It makes sense if you think about it. A medieval village couldn't afford to build walls around every house and barn, but there was one building already made of stone, already sitting at the center of the settlement, already the place everyone gathered. So across Europe, villagers did something practical and a little bit brilliant. They turned their churches into fortresses. In Transylvania, German Saxon settlers built over 300 fortified churches between the 13th and 16th centuries. These were not symbolic. They were engineered for survival. The fortified church at Pramer, originally built by the Teutonic Knights, could shelter more than 1,600 people inside 4 stories of rooms packed between the inner walls and the church itself. It withstood over 50 attacks across centuries, from Mongol raids to Cossack incursions, and was only captured once. In what is now Slovenia, around 300 village churches were fortified during the Ottoman-Habsburg Wars of the 15th and 16th centuries. In Krakow, Poland, the Church of St. Andrew, built in the 1080s, was the only Romanesque church in the city to survive the Mongol invasion of 1241. The Germans even had a name for the most elaborate ones: Kirchenbergen, church castles. Think of them as medieval community bunkers. You store grain inside the walls, you store weapons. When the warning bell rings, every family in the village grabs what they can carry and runs for the one building that can actually hold them. The door closes, and now an attacker is not robbing a scattered village. He's trying to siege a fortified structure full of people with nowhere to retreat and nothing left to lose. But all of these strategies, the frank pledge, the hue and cry, the Statute of Winchester, the fortified churches, were defensive. What happened when communities decided to stop hiding and start hitting back? Remember the Raubritter, the robber knights of the Holy Roman Empire? During the interregnum, with no emperor to restrain them, they'd terrorized the Rhine for years, robbing ships, seizing cargo, kidnapping merchants. By 1254, the people who depended on those trade routes had had enough. Nobles, knights, and lords of the church banded together to form the Rhine League, a coalition with one straightforward mission: destroy the robber castles. And they moved fast. In just 3 years, the League besieged, captured, and demolished between 10 and 12 fortified castles that Raubritter had been using as bases. On at least one occasion, they intervened to rescue a kidnapping victim taken by the Baron of Rheinberg. The procedure they pioneered, surround the castle, take it, burn it to the ground, became the standard playbook for dealing with robber knights long after the League itself fell apart. When the interregnum finally ended in 1273 and Rudolf of Habsburg became emperor, he picked up exactly where the Rhine League left off. He marched on the robber castles at Sunek, torched them, and hanged the knights inside. And in France, the crown eventually found the most pragmatic solution of all. Rather than fight the free companies, the same companies that had crushed a royal army at Brignais, King Charles VII simply absorbed them. The Ordonnance of 1445 folded former routiers into permanent royal companies, paying them regular wages to serve the crown instead of pillaging the countryside. By the 1450s, the free company model that had terrorized France for a century was effectively dead. The bandits had not been defeated. They'd been hired. So go back to that battlefield at Brignais in 1362. An army of mercenaries just destroyed a royal force. The king's own nobles are dead or captured. And somewhere nearby, a farmer hears the news and thinks, that could be my village next. But that farmer is not helpless. He's part of a tithing where 10 families guarantee each other's conduct. He knows that if he hears a scream on the road, he grabs a weapon, one the law requires him to own, and runs. The highway past his village has been cleared 60 meters deep on both sides because a 500-year-old statute says his lord will pay if it isn't. His town gates lock at sundown. If a bandit strikes and escapes, his entire district shares the cost, so everyone watches, everyone cares, everyone acts. And if the worst comes, if hundreds of armed men ride in, his neighbors know exactly where to go. The stone church at the center of the village, the one with walls thick enough to hold. Medieval people built something we've mostly forgotten. A world where safety was not somebody else's job. No professional police, no standing army on every corner. Just communities that understood a brutal truth. If you don't protect each other, nobody will. 544 years. That's how long the Statute of Winchester stayed on the books. We replaced it with uniformed officers and squad cars. But the principle underneath, that your safety depends on the people standing next to you, that never really went away. What would your neighborhood look like if everyone in it was personally responsible for everyone else? If you enjoyed this story, subscribe. There are plenty more where this came from. See you in the next one.